Hello everyone, today we are going to be discussing the book You Have the Right to Remain Silent by James Duane. And for those of you who don't know, James Duane is a law professor, and he's also the creator of the viral lecture, Don't Talk to the Police. I believe it went viral in 2008, and he has over 21 million views on it actually. In his book, James tackles many important issues regarding talking to the police, but before we get into that, we need to talk about some background information as to why he even wrote the book in the first place. He made sure to put emphasis on the very first few pages, actually I think on the first page, that this book was not meant to be anti-police or against the police. However, it was meant to teach individuals how to protect their rights, freedoms, and future when talking to the police and being put in these situations. In fact, another thing he says in the first few pages is how those people who actually have law enforcement parents or relatives or people they know in law enforcement, how law enforcement parents tell their children that to remain silent, to not say anything, because they're the ones who know that anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. And that's why they tell them that. In fact, James even utilizes cases where innocent people were wrongfully imprisoned because of the information they willingly gave police in hopes of helping their case. They actually made it much, much worse. And he talks about these innocent people being wrongfully accused and imprisoned to support his claim that you need to learn to protect yourself and not talk to police if you're in a situation, because anything you say will be used against you. So it's better just to ask for an attorney and not say anything. And he even talks about how this situation happens a lot more than not, and how we need to protect ourselves, basically. And he discusses how that not all police officers, which I thought this was interesting, he talks about how not all police officers are to blame, even though there are corrupt ones. There's corrupt people in any workplace. But he mostly focuses on how they, as a whole, are a part of a broken legal system, which, again, I found really interesting. But because before reading this book, I looked at the back, and it says at the top, it says, "Don't talk to the police," and I saw that in bold. And I was concerned because in our society today, we seem to have a biased point of view regarding different things on social media. I am an unbiased individual. I've never been for one side or the other. But picking up this book, I thought it was going to be more like, okay, anti-this, than focusing on how it can help me as an individual. So I was very pleasantly surprised that within the first few pages, he made it a point to not bash the police, but rather focus on protecting our own individual rights. And I appreciated it. I also found it very interesting that when he was talking about the legal system, which he did a lot in the book, his main focus was that the legal system is broken and that the police are doing what they are trained to do. They're trained to lie, trained to deceive, all to show how corrupt the system is. And the fact that they have to be trained to lie and be dishonest to benefit themselves, I find is very sad, when they should be trying to help the situation and resolve the issue rather than focusing on arrest. And for an example, in the book he talks about a 16-year-old girl who had just given birth to her child, who sadly child passed away not long after, and because the police believed that she killed him, they actually interrogated her for 2 hours, and it turned out the police had no evidence that anyone had killed her child or that his death, was anything other than an accident. But they still questioned her aggressively, trying to get a confession out of her. They even went as far as to lie to her and told her that they wanted to quote-unquote help her, and if she confessed, they'd just make it a juvenile case, and that she wouldn't be, it'd be a minor issue and she could get on with her life. But in reality, after she confessed to something she didn't do, she was charged as an adult for murder, and she was held in prison for nearly 3 years until the charges were dropped. And they basically gaslighted her into confessing that she was innocent, when in reality she was innocent all along. Sorry, they gaslighted her into thinking she was not thinking she was guilty, into pleading guilty, even though she was innocent, because they made it seem that it would just be really simple for her. But in fact, it wasn't. It probably ruined majority of her life. And I thought this was really important because in TV shows and reality, police will lie to get a confession out of people, even without proper evidence. So this just puts it into perspective for me to not say anything if I ever get in trouble or put in a situation that I don't think I will, but you never know. Another case James talks about that I wanted to discuss was... is that it was an outrageous case about a 17-year-old man named Salvador Rubio, and he was interrogated by the police just like the 16-year-old, but it was a murder case, and where he faced a mandatory minimum prison of a sentence to 45 years, and he was ultimately convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 60 years. His lawyer tried to argue that Salvador had been tricked into making statements that were used to help convict him, because the police interrogating him told him that the judge would basically give him the worst possible sentence to a suspect who falsely denied their guilt. Even though he was innocent, they were trying to make it seem like if you plead guilty, you'll probably have a better chance of getting out of it, which makes no sense. But they were just saying that to get a confession out of him, right? They even went so far as to say that him being uncooperative makes him look worse. And they were lying to him and giving him legal advice that was stupid, and it cost him 60 years of his life. And I think it was probably a really important part of the book, because it really showed how the police were more interested in framing a suspect instead of actually solving the case. Like, they would rather take the time interrogating people who are innocent for the sake of locking somebody away and throwing away the key. It's almost as if they see these cases like a puzzle, and the suspects that they have are the last piece of the puzzle, and all they have to do is put it in a corner and it's finished, and they don't have to worry about any other possibilities that could be plausible. But the bottom line is clear. Even though you are innocent, the police will do whatever it takes to get you to talk if they think you might be guilty. And I'm really glad I read this book, because it opened my eyes to how protective I need to be over myself if I ever find myself in a dangerous situation. And I commend people for reading it, because though it is a short read, it has a lot of depth to it. So thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.